5 spine-chilling motel tales unveiling sinister secrets that will haunt you forever. Sarah pulled into the faded parking lot of the Xander Motel, her heart racing as the rusted sign creaked in the evening wind. Exhausted from running, she gathered her 2 children, Lucy and Max. They needed rest, they needed safety. But as they stepped through the doors, their hopeful sighs turned to nervous glances. The lobby was adorned with outdated wallpaper that seemed to close in around them, and the smell of stale coffee hung like a ghost. The receptionist smiled too wide, his eyes glinting in a way that made her skin crawl. "Welcome." "Checking in," he chirped, his voice dripping with an unnerving cheerfulness. Sarah swallowed, feeling a shiver creep down her spine. As they trudged down the narrow hallway, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. A soft whisper echoed a child's laughter. Or perhaps a wail that lingered just at the edge of her hearing. Panic flickered in her chest. She clutched her children closer, desperation squeezing her heart. This was supposed to be a fresh start, away from her ex-husband's haunting grip, but now Sarah felt the shadows stretching, waiting. "Look, Mommy!" Lucy exclaimed, her innocent voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere as she pointed at a weathered photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It showed a family, grinning brightly, happiness etched on their faces. Sarah forced a smile, but as she studied the picture, she noticed something unsettling. It was a happiness tainted with a lurking shadow behind their eyes, a flicker of desperation that sent cold shivers through her. "What if we have some fun?" Max suggested, oblivious to the growing dread. As he darted off to explore, Sarah hesitated, her instincts screaming. Something was off about this place. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As darkness enveloped the motel, the once quaint charm warped into something deeply unsettling. Doors slammed shut behind her, echoing down the empty hallway like a warning bell. The air grew dense, suffocating, as if the walls themselves conspired against her. She could hear her kids' laughter morphing into something grotesque. Max. Lucy. Her heart raced. She felt the walls tightening around her. Rushing to the office, the manager's face loomed in shadows, his grin widening, revealing too many teeth. "Nothing to worry about. Just another night," he cooed, but there was a glint in his eyes, a darkness that resonated with her family's past. Panic surged through her. What was happening? Finally, she spotted them. Lucy and Max huddled in a corner like frightened rabbits, surrounding faded remnants of other families' stays, scattered toys, and a tangled mess of old clothes. The children were transfixed by something in an old, dusty trunk. Sarah's breath hitched when she caught sight of a photograph tucked inside. The faces looked hauntingly familiar, the same dark eyes staring back. The truth hit her with sickening force. This motel was no refuge, it was a cruel host to their lineage of sorrow. Just then, a terrible realization crashed over her. They weren't just passing through, they were being watched, and whatever haunted those walls wanted something back. As shadows flickered, Sarah reached for her children, heart pounding against her ribs, and prepared to fight to reclaim what was hers. Something ancient was stirring in the dark, her awakening had rekindled a forest of horrors. And she had walked right into its trap. Sarah's breath came in short, panicked gasps as she tugged her children closer. Shadows flitted down the hallway, and she could almost feel the air thickening with ancient malice. The soft whispers transformed into distinct voices, overlapping one another, weaving stories of despair and tragedy that pulled at the corners of her mind. "Mommy?" Lucy's small voice trembled. "Can we go home?" "Soon, sweetie. We'll just finish this yet." Her words felt hollow, a fragile comfort that might shatter at any moment. Max tugged at her shirt, pointing to the dusty trunk. "What's in there, Mommy?" Maybe we shouldn't tea, but the children were already peering over the edge, their curiosity sparked. Sarah stood frozen, caught between fear and the urge to protect. She knew that whatever lay in that trunk had already seeped into the marrow of this place. "Look!" Max exclaimed suddenly, his eyes wide. He pulled out an old music box, its intricate carvings coated in a layer of dust. The moment he wound it up, a haunting tune filled the air, echoing against the walls like a lullaby spun from nightmares. A chill swept through the room, and the shadows quivered. Images flashed before her eyes, former guests captured in fleeting moments of laughter and joy, but it twisted, darkening to reveal their anguished faces, drowning in grief. Cold sweat trickled down Sarah's back. "Stop it!" she yelled, snatching the music box from Max's hands, but not before she caught a glimpse in the mirrored surface a woman in old-fashioned clothing staring back at her, mouth moving but words lost in the melody's grip. "Mommy, it's so pretty," Lucy whispered, drawn to the dark allure of the box. "No. We need to go." Sarah fumbled with the box, desperate to silence the eerie tune. The shadows deepened around them, swallowing the faint light. As she tried to close the lid, a heavy hand landed on her shoulder. She spun around to find the receptionist looming over her, his eyes dark pools of intent. "Careful with that," he intoned, voice velvet thick with menace. "It belongs to one of the families." "What families?" Her heart thundered in her chest. The air crackled with fear, her instincts screaming at her to escape. "Those who never left," he said, leaning closer, the stench of old coffee and decay washing over her. "It's time to pay us a visit. They've been waiting." A shiver raced down her spine, chilling her bones. "Run!" Sarah shouted, shoving her children ahead of her, the music box clattering from her hand as she sprinted down the hall. She could feel the shadows clawing at her legs, her thoughts spiraling into panic. Laughter erupted behind them, echoing off the walls, a cacophony of twisted joy. Desperate, they raced through the door at the end of the hall, bursting into a dimly lit room filled with echoes of the past. Pictures adorned the walls, faces staring back with hollow eyes that seemed to follow. "Mommy, I'm scared." Lucy clung to her tightly. "Look for a way out," Sarah yelled, searching frantically. Yet the door they entered had vanished, replaced by a solid wall. "Welcome to our family," the voices chirped, laughter mingling with cries as the door slowly creaked open behind them. The way back was there, but the darkness loomed larger, pressing toward them like a hungry beast. The choice was clear: stay with the past or step back into the unknown. Before Sarah could decide, a shadow detached itself from the wall, a figure emerging from the darkness. It reached toward them, fingers stretching, a twisted smile spreading across its face. And in that moment, with nowhere to escape, she realized they were already part of the story. But what role would they play when the tale was told? Panic surged through Sarah as she realized they were trapped. The laughter grew louder, a twisted symphony of torment. It echoed off the walls like the cries of the forgotten, resonating with an urgency that clawed at her sanity. "Stay close," she shouted, gripping Lucy and Max's hands tighter. The wall felt claustrophobic, pressing in on them. She turned, her mind racing for options. If only they could find a window, an escape, anything. But the room was too small. Shadows flickered along the edges of her vision, moving like wraiths ready to claim her. And that twisted figure, with its ghastly smile, was still advancing, its fingers beckoning as if inviting them into the depths of despair. "Not this way," Sarah cried, pushing her children toward a far corner. The pictures on the walls, smiling families frozen in time, seemed to distort, the mirth in their eyes replaced by the cold gaze of something sinister. They were a warning. She could feel their despair wrapping around her like a coil of barbed wire. "Mommy," Lucy whimpered, her eyes wide, shimmering with tears. "Lucy, listen to me. We have to." But before she could finish, the lights flickered, plunging them into near darkness. Sarah felt her heart slam against her ribs as she instinctively pulled the children's bodies against hers, the laughter morphed into something darker, a low rumble that resonated within the walls. It seemed to seep into their bones, chilling her to the core. Shadows danced erratically, one moment they were menacing figures, and the next they melted away into the corners of the room. Suddenly, the door creaked ominously open, revealing the hallway beyond. A glimmer of hope. Or a trap? Paralyzed by dread, Sarah glanced at Max. "Do you see that?" "Yeah, but Mommy, we have to go," he whispered, his grip tightening. "You're right," she breathed. The figure was still lingering, its smile stretching impossibly wide as it seemed to shift closer with every heartbeat. Without thinking, she dashed toward the doorway, urging her children to follow. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if unsettled by their resolve. They burst into the hallway, the air swarming with a grisly stillness that threatened to swallow them once more, but as they ran, the walls of the motel pulsated, an almost organic rhythm that throbbed in tune with their racing hearts. Images flared in her mind, places she had never been, but they felt eerily familiar. Doorways that had once seemed safe now felt like traps, enticing them to wander further into the darkness. "Mommy, where do we go?" Max's voice broke through her thoughts. "Just keep running," she shouted back, desperation clear in her tone. They sprinted down the hallway, the laughter now replaced by an unnerving silence that clung to the air. The reception area loomed in front of them, empty and sinister. Then Sarah veered left into another hallway, illuminated by the faintest hint of glowing blue light. It flickered dynamically, as if it was beckoning them. "This way," she urged, ignoring the nagging voice in her head warning her. They stumbled into a large room, filled with paranormal relics and objects from bygone eras. The atmosphere felt heavy, laden with secrets. But all Sarah could see was the mantle holding various trinkets capped with a glimmering crystal. It sparkled enticingly, masked in neglect but emanating a soft hum that resonated deep within her soul. Mommy?" Lucy's voice trembled as she lingered near a dusty mirror. "What's that?" As Sarah turned, her own reflection was replaced by the image of the woman from the music box, eyes wide with fear, mouth moving silently like a fish gasping for air. Without warning, the laughter erupted again, filling the room with dread, echoing the haunted promise of the past. "Stop! Stay away!" Sarah shouted, but the laughter swallowed her words. Suddenly, shadows swirled around them, taking form. Figures emerged from the dark, their faces twisted in agony, hands outstretched toward the children. The door behind them slammed shut with a deafening bang, sealing them inside. And at that moment, Sarah understood the truth: they weren't seeking escape. They were destined to become part of the very history that chained this malevolent space together. She felt her voice falter and a new chill grip her heart. What came next was unavoidable. Could she fend off the darkness, or would it claim them, weaving them into its tragic tapestry? The shadows shifted, twisting into greater forms, yet their faces remained obscured, pulsating with an insatiable hunger. Sarah could feel their breath, a frigid gust curling around her, mixing with the heavy air that tinged with the smell of decay. Her heart raced, each beat a desperate plea for survival. "Mommy!" Lucy clung tighter to Sarah's leg, her small frame trembling like a leaf. "Max, we need to find a way out," Sarah urged, her voice almost breaking. The crystal on the mantle was impossible to ignore now. Its magical allure whispered promises of safety, yet she knew deep down it was a trap designed to ensnare. With resolve outweighing her fear, Sarah's instincts kicked in. "Look for something to defend yourself with," she commanded. Max darted to a nearby table, riffling through dusty trinkets. He brandished a rusted letter opener, its jagged edge glinting weakly. Sarah took a deep breath, nodding, and grabbed a heavy candlestick resting nearby. It felt cold in her grip, yet it was solid, an anchor in her rising tide of panic. The laughter crescendoed, drowning out the sound of their rapid breathing, morphing into screams otherworldly, echoing, alive. The figures surged forward, eyes glimmering with something unearthly. A woman stepped out from the chaos, eerily familiar. They will take you, she cried, her voice hoarse and raspy, carrying the agony of countless souls. Get away! Sarah shouted, brandishing the candlestick as if it could ward off the oncoming tide of malevolence. But as she swung, the shadows spread, absorbing the light, mocking her attempt. Lucy shrieked, the sound rising above the din. Mommy, please. Sarah's heart felt like it might burst. We have to break the mirror, she yelled, pointing at the glass where the image of the sad woman still lingered. The reflection was now joined by others, faces twisted in despair, mouths moving in silent terror. Why? Max asked, confusion etched on his young features. Because it's our only chance. We break the connection. With a fierce yell, she hurled the candlestick against the mirror. It shattered, the sound piercing the air with a terrifying clarity. But instead of escape, the glass tore like a wound, spilling forth a black mist that engulfed everything. Midnight shadows coiled around them, infiltrating their lungs with cold dread. Sarah felt the chill creep into her bones, dragging her into a darkness thicker than despair. Hold on to each other. She grasped Lucy tightly. They huddled close as they were pushed back against the remaining furniture. The sinister laughter harmonized with the cries of despair around them, threatening to drown them in its madness. Suddenly, a low rumble surged beneath their feet. The ground trembled, and the faces in the mist became frantic, their eyes pleading. Run! The woman screamed, and with that, the shadows lunged. Max slipped from Sarah's grip, his tiny hands found new strength, and he dashed forward. Mommy! Come on! Max! The sheer panic exploded in her chest. This was how it was supposed to end. She leapt through the mist, the air crackling around her, and grasped Max just as he reached perilously close to the door. They stumbled out into a corridor that now pulsed with light. This way! Max screamed, dragging Lucy and Sarah along. The laughter faded, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against her mind like an urgent threat. Just ahead, a door glimmered with a sickly yellow light, urging them forward like a beacon. But as they approached, Sarah hesitated. It felt wrong, too inviting, too perfect an escape from the horror that wreathed them. Mommy? Lucy whimpered, her voice barely audible. Should we? Sarah breathed, fear cracking her resolve. At that moment, from behind them, the laughter erupted once more, a maniacal cackle that shook the foundations of the hallway. Shadows surged forward, morphing into a wave of despair. Faster than she could think, Sarah lunged for the doorknob. It twisted and turned in her hand, but as it opened, what lay beyond was not the freedom they so desperately sought. It was an abyss of visions. Chaos spilled forward, threading into the fabric of time itself. Faces, memories, horrors, thousands of screams, and just as they stepped through, Sarah understood the truth: they weren't fleeing darkness. They were stepping into the heart of it, what awaited them in this new realm of unending horrors. They stumbled into the nothingness, the air thickening, wrapping around them like a wet blanket. Eyes darted everywhere, desperately searching for anything familiar, anything that could guide them back. Instead, they were met by an endless expanse, shadows writhing like living creatures, manifesting the most primal fears. Help! Lucy's voice cracked, a fragile sound swallowed whole by the dark. Lucy! Sarah screamed, panic flooding her veins. Just moments before, the very notion of safety had felt close, almost tangible. Now it felt a million miles away. Dark clouds swirled around them, twisting into shapes that clawed at the edges of her sanity. Ahead, vague figures flickered like faulty film projections, each distortion framing fragments of a nightmare that pressed into her thoughts. Sarah reached for Max's hand, squeezing it tightly. We have to stick together. But as she gripped him, an echo rippled through the shadows. Together? The voice was a low growl laced with malice. As she looked up, a figure emerged from the fog, a tall silhouette, its face obscured, but its presence electrifying. It raised a hand, and shadows darted forth, coiling around Sarah and her children. Don't let them take you. The words were barely more than a whisper through the noise of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Laughter danced in the air, sharp like knives, and Sarah felt her knees buckle. With a sudden burst, the figure lunged, revealing a grotesque face, twisted with an eternal grin. "You have no idea what awaits you here," it taunted, its voice deep and grating. Each word pulsed with power, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt a pull, as if her very thoughts were being dragged towards that darkness. She snapped back, forcing her mind to focus. "We need to run." They turned, racing through the void, the sound of their footsteps echoing like thunder. Shadows lashed at their heels, sharp and insistent. Lucy stumbled, her small body crashing to the ground as the merciless darkness reached for them, the cold hands of despair brushing against her skin. "Help me!" Lucy wailed, her voice a haunting melody mixed with terror. "Lucy! Get up!" Max cried, urgency sharpening his voice. Without thinking, Sarah sprinted back, scooping Lucy up in her arms. The shadows shrieked, furious at their escape. "Keep moving." The shadows writhed, an angry sea rising and crashing, trying to pull them under. The laughter morphed into sobbing, creating an unsettling cacophony resonating in the depths of Sarah's mind. "Where do we go?" Max's question hung heavy in the air, swallowed by darkness all around them. "I don't know," Sarah shouted. Their sanctuary had become a prison, and the presence of the mocking figure loomed closer, a predator ready to pounce. Suddenly, she spotted an archway in the distance, flickering with a faint light. "There." She pointed, hope igniting a flicker in her chest. They pushed towards it, limbs burning from fear and exertion. The laughter grew louder, almost drowning out Lucy's whimpers. Thunderous footsteps echoed behind them, growing closer, an ominous reminder that their time was running out. Just as they neared the archway, a scream erupted from the darkness, paralyzing Sarah. The shadows froze for a fleeting moment, their laughter halted. "Run!" Max urged, his small voice now fierce with determination. With renewed courage, Sarah darted forward, bursting through the archway. It felt like piercing flesh, an electric shock that rattled her bones. They stumbled into a new chamber, dimly lit, filled with mirrors lining the walls. But reflections did not reflect them. Instead, they showcased grotesque versions of their fears and regrets, lost moments, shadows of what they could become and were afraid of being. Sarah gasped, horrified. "This is where they feed," panic surged back. They were surrounded by shards of darkness, each mirror reflecting a different horror, trapping them in visions that spiraled deeper into their psyches. "No way but forward!" Sarah yelled, as the laughter began anew, wrapping around her mind like chains. She pulled at Max's end. Lucy, desperation guiding her movements. And as they moved deeper into the room, Sarah knew one thing for certain: escaping the shadows was just the beginning. A chill threaded through her veins as a voice whispered, "You can run but you cannot hide. They know you." They had entered a realm of nightmares. But what sinister truth lay within those mirrors? What would they uncover as the shadows drew closer? The mirrors loomed, their surfaces slick and beckoning. Each step Sarah took was echoed by an unsettling flutter of movement within the glass. Max's grip tightened around her hand, and Lucy buried her face against Sarah's shoulder, trembling. The reflections twisted, contorting into shapes of sorrow and despair that knotted in Sarah's stomach. "Look, there!" Max shouted, pointing at the far wall where a mirror shimmered differently from the rest. It gleamed like a beacon, but darkness clung to its edges, threatening to swallow the light whole. "What do we do?" Lucy whispered, her voice hoarse. Sarah hesitated, her heart racing. "We approach it." "Stay close," she said, her determination faltering under the weight of the nightmarish voices echoing from the mirrors. They taunted her with lost opportunities, with decisions that led them into this hell. Each vision pressed closer, as if trying to spill out into reality. They trudged forward, a sense of inevitability pulling them. Sarah felt the cold air grow sharper, and the laughter began again, intoxicating, sinister, weaving through the chamber like smoke. As they reached the shimmering mirror, Sarah looked deep into its depths. She recoiled. The reflection showed not just their faces but distorted versions of themselves, Max with haunted eyes, Lucy appearing aged and frail, and Sarah herself caught in a cascade of tears. Panic surged. "No. We're not like that," she shouted, fueled by desperation. That a low rumble echoed behind them, the mocking figure emerging from the darkness, its grin wider, more grotesque. "They see the truth in their hearts, Sarah. You cannot escape what you are shut up," she yelled, baring her teeth. Sarah took a step forward, but the mirror reached out, encasing her in a shimmering web, each thread of fear unveiled, a regret manifested. "Mom!" Max shouted, pulling at Sarah, but the grip of the mirror tightened, threatening to hold them all captive. Lucy's whimpers filled the air, mixed with shrieks from the distorted reflections. "I can't let you go," the figure roared, and in an instant, the walls vibrated with chaos. Laughter morphed into screams, the shadows slashing through torment. Sarah fought back with every ounce of strength, pushing against the crushing weight of despair. That in a moment of clarity, she remembered her children's faces, the love coursing through her, a flicker of light amidst all the darkness. "We are not the things they show," she yelled. "We are stronger than this." With each word, the hold on her loosened, rays of warmth began to seep through the icy grasp of the shadows. Max and Lucy rallied, drawing from her defiance. They surged together, breaking the mirror's illusion, their reflections shattering into shards that exploded outward, scattering the dark figures that danced in the periphery. What remained were whispers faint but insistent. Not all truths must be faced. The oppressive laughter dimmed as they stumbled away from the collapsing mirror, the grotesque figure writhing in fury. But as the last reflection shattered, a darker abyss opened up behind them, pulling back the veil just enough to reveal something looming on the horizon wrought with dread. "Where is that?" Max asked, voice trembling, as they caught their breath. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving." Just then, shadows began to gather, swirling with new intent, revealing a path cloaked in darkness. The mocking echo from the figure filled the air. "You can escape, but in doing so, you wake it. So, what will you choose?" With terror igniting their resolve, Sarah took a deep breath, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing time was running out. And as they plunged into the engulfing darkness, a chilling thought struck Sarah: what was waiting for them in the next despairing chamber? Would every step forward only plunge them deeper into a nightmare? They stepped into the dark path, and the air turned thick, heavy with a sense of foreboding. Sarah struggled to see where they were going, the shadows coiling around them, pressing tighter like a vice. Max and Lucy followed close behind, their presence grounding her in the unknown. As they moved, the sounds of their footfalls echoed in the silence: thud, 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 like a heart beating against the stillness. Each step felt like they were intruding on something ancient, something that did not welcome them. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the path opened into a new chamber, larger, colder. The walls were lined with more mirrors, but they weren't quite right. The glass shimmered with a sickly hue, pulsing like a living thing. Instinctively, Sarah wrapped her arms protectively around her children, as if they were the last remaining light in this encroaching darkness. "Mom, it feels wrong," Lucy whispered, her voice trembling. "I know," Sarah replied, though she wasn't sure how to comfort her. These mirrors felt different. They weren't just reflections, they held something more sinister. Sprays of darkness wove through the glass like veins, vibrating with their own life and purpose, as if they were waiting for them. She caught a glance at her reflection, and her heart stalled. Instead of her weary face, a twisted form stared back, eyes wide with terror, mouth gaping in a silent scream. Panic washed over her. What could it mean? Images flared, each more disturbing than the last, depicting failures and fears that clawed at her insides. Max grabbed her hand tighter. "What do we do now?" he asked, voice quaking. She turned away from the mirror, facing the oppressive shadows encroaching around them. "We don't give in. We can't look back." But the shadows breathed a low whisper, brushing the edges of her consciousness. What if the escape is just another trap? It rolled through the air, wrapping around her like the fingers of a predator. Max and Lucy shifted uneasily. They were in a prison of their own dread, a darkness that felt both familiar and alien, a nightmare turned real. Sarah swallowed hard, forcing her breath to steady. We can handle this. Together. One by one, she led her children deeper into the chamber, the mirrors appearing to ripple with anticipation. Each step felt like an invitation to linger, to gaze into the truths they feared. The whispers twisted, tickling the edges of her resolve. Find your truth, face your fears. Suddenly, the mirrors reacted violently, cracking and splintering as if some dark force was thrashing from within. A cacophony of screams erupted, mixing with laughter, a haunting melody of despair that made her bones ache. Run! She shouted, pulling the children with her as they sprinted toward the exit that dimly flickered at the far side of the room. Behind them, laughter morphed into a roar, and the air turned icy, tightening around them like a noose. As they reached the edge of the chamber, something grabbed Sarah's ankle, yanking her back into the pain of her deepest regrets flashing through the glass. Mom! Max screamed, lunging forward, but that voice, it sounded so much like her own, whispering insidious truths laced with guilt. You're letting them down. They'll always remember this. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah twisted, breaking free from its grip. She stumbled forward, catching Lucy tightly against her chest. They hurled themselves into the flickering light, and just as darkness threatened to consume them again, they burst through, but the moment they breathed the stale air of the exit, another terror sprang forth. A door stood open, revealing a rickety staircase spiraling downwards, beckoning them further into the depths. Where does that lead? Lucy asked, her voice barely a whisper as her wide eyes darted to the shadows around them. I don't know, Sarah admitted, dread settling heavy in her stomach. But it feels like the only way out, or the worst mistake of our lives. As they hesitated on the brink of the staircase, a terrible laughter echoed behind them. It curled through the air. Sweet yet twisted, promising horrors yet unseen. What lies below? Max breathed, trembling, and Sarah could only respond, breath hitching in her throat, I have no idea. But we can't stay here. With hearts pounding, they descended the creaking stairs, each step filled with uncertainty. What waited below, shrouded in darkness and tainted memories, might be the thing that finally broke them. But they had no choice. The call of the unknown was powerful, and as they moved deeper into the abyss, all Sarah could think was not every door leads to salvation. Each step down those rickety stairs felt like the weight of doom pressing down. The wood groaned underfoot, echoing in the silence like a warning. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, every splintered crack of the staircase sent chills racing down her spine. Max and Lucy followed close behind, their faces drained of color, eyes wide with fright. They reached the bottom, and a flickering light greeted them, weak, almost flickering out completely. It came from an old bulb dangling precariously from a ceiling, illuminating a narrow corridor lined with peeling wallpaper. The air was stale, thick with dust and something else, something acrid, as if long-forgotten memories were trapped in the very walls that surrounded them. Where are we? Lucy whimpered, her heart racing. Stay close, Sarah urged, her voice trembling. They moved forward, the flickering light casting eerie shadows that shifted and danced, mirroring their unease. A door at the end of the hallway stood slightly ajar, its hinges rusted and worn. It might lead to a way out, Sarah suggested, her courage faltering under the oppressive atmosphere. As they approached, whispers curled around them, swirling like smoke. Dread coiled in her gut, it felt like the darkness itself was alive, pressing against her, hungry for their fear. Pushing the door open, it creaked loudly, announcing their presence to whatever awaited inside. The room was small and dimly lit, revealing a disheveled motel room trapped in time. The bed was unmade, and clothes lay strewn about on the floor, but it was the mirror above the dresser that drew them in. The glass was warped, twisted, and seemed to draw them closer, warping reality like it was alive. Mom, don't, Max pleaded, as if he could sense the danger creeping around the edges of the room. But Sarah found herself unable to resist. The mirror shimmered, reflections twisting into horrific images, ghostly faces flickering in and out of sight, expressions of anguish and despair. It showed a mother with her children, shadows clinging to them like drapes of despair, each shadow holding past mistakes and unspoken fears. Look at that, Lucy pointed, her finger trembling as it hovered over a reflection. The glass pulsed, and suddenly the vision changed, revealing a horrific scene, a young girl standing by a bed, the shadows curling around her, whispering secrets that sent waves of pure terror through Sarah's body. "Lucy, let us go. We can't stay here." Sarah screamed, but the pull of the mirror tightened like chains around her. The echo of their laughter twisted into cries, a cacophony of regret. Before she could move, the mirror shattered, sending shards flying across the room, each reflecting a glimpse of their deepest fears. Blood-curdling screams filled the air, rising above any rational thought, but Sarah clamped her hands over her ears, trying to block it out. Max and Lucy clung to her, eyes wide, face pale, unable to comprehend the manifestations of their horrors. "What's happening?" Max shouted, but his voice was drowned by the chaos, a fading whisper in the storm. Daring a glance at the tattered reflections now cut through with shards of glass, Sarah felt the pressure of despair intensify. The air grew colder, and with it, darkness seeped in from every corner. "We have to leave. Now!" she shouted, pulling the children back toward the doorway. But it was no longer there. The exit had vanished, swallowed by the shadows, as the whispers around them grew louder, begging them to surrender. "Mom! It's back!" Lucy screamed. A figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette of everything they feared. Its eyes glittered with malice, a desire to reach out and consume them whole. "Run! Don't look back!" Sarah yelled, ushering her children into the depths of unfolding nightmares. As they raced back down the corridor, every instinct screamed that something was wrong, that escape was slipping through their fingers like sand, but as they stumbled through the crumbling door at the other end, Sarah's heart sank. The corridor had turned into a twisting maze, each turn darker than the last, and beneath them, a deafening sound of laughter echoed, a chorus of torment. "Where are we?" she gasped, real fear gripping her heart. "Mom! Please!" Max cried, pulling her arm. The laughter grew louder, exhilarating and chilling all at once. Sarah turned around, and for a fleeting moment, the darkness seemed to part, revealing a glimpse of what lay ahead. Shadows slid back like a curtain, unveiling a room filled with empty furniture, waiting, expecting. "What the hell is that?" Lucy trembled, her eyes wide with panic, and as Sarah stared ahead into the void, one thought pierced through the overwhelming dread: would they ever find a way back? Each flickering light above dimmed, leaving them swallowed in darkness once more. They were in the belly of the beast now, deeper than they had ever wanted to go. What awaited them was not merely an escape, it was a reality woven from their own fears, where salvation and horror blurred together. The shadows twisted again, flickering in and out of sight, leaving them at the precipice of an unthinkable choice. Would they face what lurked behind door number 1, or the unseen terror that slithered in the shadows? The darkness pressed against them, thick and cold. Sarah's heart hammered. Every breath felt like a struggle. She could feel the children's anxiety radiating from them, their small hands trembling against her grip. "Where do we go?" Max asked, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "Stay with me," she replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. But the words tasted hollow on her tongue. They pushed ahead, the darkness wrapping around them like a shroud. The air inside the room felt oppressive, as if it was alive, filled with memories that weren't their own. A chorus of laughter echoed from the back, cruel and mocking. Sarah flinched, her heart racing. "Mom!" Lucy squealed, pressing closer. From deep within the shadows, a low growl reverberated, the sound vibrating through the walls. It was a deep, throaty rumble, one that clawed at her insides, sending bile rising in her throat. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to flee, but running in this suffocating darkness felt impossible. Turning to her left, she spotted another door, slightly ajar. It flickered with a faint light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Hey, over here!" she called, urging the kids toward it, a hideous hope igniting in her chest. Pushing through the door, the trio stumbled into a room that felt somehow familiar yet wrong. It was a quaint little dining space, the kind you'd expect in a cozy bed and breakfast, adorned with faded floral wallpaper and an old oak table. But it was the chilling silence that gripped Sarah's heart like a vice. "Why would they have this here?" Max said, his voice trembling with confusion. "Maybe it's a trap," Lucy whispered, looking around nervously. Before Sarah could respond, a clatter echoed from the kitchen attached to the room. A stark flash of light illuminated a shadow flitting past, a blur that sent adrenaline surging through her. They weren't alone. "Mom!" Max hissed, panic lacing his voice. "Stay behind me," she commanded firmly, her heart racing as she approached the kitchen doorway. Peering around the corner, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A figure hovered near the sink, its back turned. The air crackled with an insidious energy that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. Just as she was about to call out, the figure turned, revealing a face obscured by thick, black hair, a face that looked eerily familiar. "Oh my God," Sarah gasped. It was her own reflection, twisted and mangled, eyes dark, skin pale as if bleached by fear. "Mom!" Lucy whimpered, her small hands gripping Sarah's waist. The possessed version of herself stretched its lips into a mocking grin, revealing teeth that glinted like shattered glass. "Join me," it crooned, the voice a sickly sweet echo that sent shivers down her spine. In that moment, the walls felt like they were closing in, the room shifting and warping. The laughter, now multiplied, filled the space, rising to a maddening crescendo. "Join us, it's better here," the voice sang, luring her in with a hypnotic pull. "Don't!" Sarah shouted, pulling the kids away, forcing herself to step back. But the walls began to pulse, the darkness stretching further, as if the house itself were alive, wanting to feed on her fear. The three of them reeled backward, stumbling into the dining room once more, confusion swirling in her mind. "Quick, the other door!" she commanded desperately, pointing to an exit on the opposite side. As they rushed toward it, the lights overhead flickered violently, growing dimmer with every step they took. Sarah could feel the pulse of the house, its hunger growing, sensing their desperation. They burst through the door, and suddenly, another hallway sprawled out, yet this one was lined with doors, each one beckoning them with the eerie promise of escape or doom. The sounds of whispers swelled again, wrapping around them like a fog, each door whispering secrets, taunting them. "Which one do we choose?" Max cried, the weight of decision heavy in the air. Before Sarah could choose, the shadows gathered, swirling and writhing, growing sharper, more defined. "Choose!" they cried, their voices now a cacophony. Panic surged as she looked between the doors, dread pooling in her stomach. If they chose wrong? "Mom, choose!" Lucy urged again, her voice shaky, the fear palpable in the air. Just as the shadows threatened to engulf them, a door began to glow with an otherworldly light, illuminating the corridor. Without thinking, Sarah grabbed her children's hands and ran toward it, hope mingling with fear. But as they reached for the door, the walls trembled and a voice hissed, "Your fear is your prison." The door swung open. What lay beyond it could either be their salvation or the worst nightmare yet. What awaited them on the other side remained shrouded in darkness, a mystery holding its breath, ready to exhale its terror. The door swung open, and the breathless silence consumed them as they crossed the threshold. On the other side lay a vast chamber, more expansive than the cramped hallway they'd just fled. The air felt lighter here, the chill dissipating just enough for Sarah to draw in a shaky breath. Yet, the moment was short-lived, as the momentary comfort was overshadowed by the oppressive weight of shadows lurking in the corners. Is it over?" Lucy whispered, her voice wavering with uncertainty. "I don't know," Sarah replied, scanning the expanse. The echoes of their own footfalls bounced back, distorted by the room's size. As the shadows swayed slightly, they presented an array of doors only this time, they seemed infused with a soft light, almost inviting. "Which one, Mom?" Max asked, his eyes darting anxiously from one door to another. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and memories came rushing back. Firmer now, they told twisted tales of anguish, moments woven into the fabric of this dark place. Sarah's heartbeat quickened as she remembered the photos of those previous guests, each one echoing with entrapment that went unnoticed until it was too late. "Not another step." A voice thundered, reverberating off the chamber walls. The shadows warped and twisted, morphing into a figure draped in darkness, a grotesque incarnation of all her fears. It reached toward her, and the air crackled with malice, igniting memories of regrets and failures. "Mommy, please!" Lucy cried, clutching Sarah's hand tightly, her small fingers trembling with terror. "No!" Sarah screamed, turning her fear into defiance. "We're not trapped here anymore. This ends now." With a surge of courage, she stepped forward, raising her eyes toward the figure. "We reclaim our lives. You don't own us. We want to be part of your sick, twisted story." Their laughter echoed back at her, a cacophony of disdain, but the sound only fueled her rage. "Step back!" Max shouted, his voice stronger than it had been. "We're a family." Together, they stood their ground, the light from the doors pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat in response to their resolve. The figure hesitated, as if debating whether to retreat or attack, but the intensity of the moment hung in the air, shimmering with an electric tension. Finally, it surged forward, shadows reaching like clawed hands aimed at subduing them. "Mommy, that's you!" Lucy screamed, pointing at the figure. Sarah's heart dropped. There, reflected within the creature, were scars of her past guilt and shame she had tried to bury. "Yes, that's me," she cried, "but it doesn't define me." With her children at her side, she charged at the luminous door, light overtaking the darkness. Together, she urged them, "We can break the cycle." They pushed through the threshold with all their strength, bodies jamming against the door until it shattered under their combined will. Light exploded forth, enveloping them entirely, blinding and heavy with warmth, shattering the shadows that had clung to their lives for far too long, and just like that, they were through. Moments later, Sarah collapsed onto the soft grass outside, the sun shining down upon them. Max and Lucy fell beside her, gasping for breath, faces flushed with disbelief. They were free, at least for now. "We're safe," Lucy murmured, her eyes glistening with hope. "Yeah, sweetheart," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with relief. "We did it. We faced the darkness and fought back." As she embraced her children, laughter burst forth, a pure, untainted joy resonating from their hearts. The air felt lighter, filled with the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers surrounding the hotel that had once been their prison. But deep down, Sarah knew their struggles weren't completely over. The shadows of the past could linger, but together, they could face whatever came next. "We're going to create our own story," she promised, determination hardening in her chest as they stood. "One where we dictate the ending, not the darkness." As they walked away from the hotel, Sarah couldn't help but glance back one last time. The fading structure seemed almost to shudder, as if acknowledging the victory they had claimed together. In the distance, their new future shimmered, bright and endless. And with every step away from that haunting past, Sarah felt more certain that they were finally moving toward a life filled with hope. Now, as you wrap up this intense journey, remember to carry their story with you, and take action. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will fill your heart with hope and thrill. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comment section with your reactions and the theories about what you think comes next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the word, together.